Namaste. Welcome to Indian Knowledge Systems Primer Course for Children. In the series of lecture on Indian astronomy, in this session we will be looking at Ayana and Ayanachalana. To very quickly summarize what we saw in the earlier lecture, we saw a concept called as ecliptic, which is otherwise called Bha Chakra or Rashi Chakra. The ecliptic is defined as the apparent annual path of the sun across the celestial sphere. So, we can see here that the celestial sphere is marked with a few constellations. It's a relative mapping. So, we try to understand where the sun is positioned at a particular season or during a specific month in the 1 year cycle. We also saw that this ecliptic is a great circle formed by the intersection of the plane of Earth's orbit with the celestial sphere. It represents the apparent path of the sun during the 1 year revolution. The ecliptic plane will again be tilted 23.5 degree, which is actually the tilt of the Earth, with respect to the plane of the celestial equator as well. Now, before we move on to the concept of Ayana, we will try to understand Ayana using a small simulation. Then we will move on to this verse.
Through earlier simulations, we have seen that on the equinoctial days, the sun rises in perfect east. And we have already seen through various simulations that every day the position of the sun keeps changing when I observe from the same place and same time. Now, if I were to also see the background, which is not seen otherwise, we see that the Rashi Chakra in which the sun is keeps changing day by day. Now, what we see is that around the solstitial day, the summer solstice, right, we see that the sun has now started going into Mithuna Rashi, then Karkata Rashi, then the Simha Rashi. We have already seen that the background keeps changing. But this southern run of the sun is called as the Dakshinayana, and the northern run that now starts from 21, right, of December, this is the Uttarayana. So when the Uttarayana is happening, actually the sun is right now in the Dhanur Rashi. Close to 14-15 centuries back, the sun, when the Uttarayana started happening, coincided perfectly with the entry into Makara Rashi. So that's why ancient texts say that Bhanor Makara Sankrantehe Shanmasa Uttarayanam. They say that starting from the time when the sun is in the Makara Rashi, it is Uttarayana, and starting from the time from which the sun is in Karkata Rashi, it is Dakshinayana. But what happens is that over time there's something called precession of equinox, that we see that in the month of June, when the sun starts the southern run after 21 of June, now the sun is in Mithuna Rashi. Though in ancient times, this southern run started when the sun entered the Karkata Rashi. So that is why the ancient texts start from a different time. However, they were very, very astute in understanding what was the background of the sun at the time when Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, and the equal days also were there in the Indian tradition.
Let's now try to chant this verse from the text Jyotir Mayukah, written by Govinda Ramachandra Moghe. Banor Sankrante Shanmasa Uttarayanam Taddeva Divasastatra Shubham karyam prashasyate Karkadirashi Shatkerke Shanmasa Dakshinayanam Devaratristadevatra Proktam Karye Prasiddhayati. As captured here in this verse, we can see that it clearly mentions Bhanor Makara Sankrantehe. Bhano is Surya, sun. When sun does the Makara Sankranti, when it moves into the Makara Rashi, it starts or it initiates the Uttarayanam. The Ayana that comes is Uttarayana. So, this Uttarayana period is considered to be spanning for 6 months. Taddeva divasastatra shubham karyam prashasyate, which means during this 6 months period of Uttarayanam, a lot of Shubha Karya can be taken up. That's what the Indian tradition says. Karkadirashi Shatkerke. Then, when the sun is entering the Karkataka Rashi, the next 6 months is called as Dakshinayanam or Devaratrihi. Uttarayanam is considered as the days for the Deva. The 6 month span is the day span for Devas, while Dakshinayanam is the Devaratrihi, it's the night. Moving on to the next slide, we will try to understand this using the celestial equator and the ecliptic. Observe these two great circles on the Khagola. The Khagola is the celestial sphere, which are depicted like this in the picture, and let's focus deeply on the two great circles, which is the ecliptic and the celestial equator. If you see the points from S4 to S2, when the sun is traversing from S4 to S2, which is winter to summer solstice, that is the Uttarayana period. And when the sun traverses from S2 to S4, which is summer to winter solstice, that will be the Dakshinayana period. Now, previously we saw that depiction was with geocentrism. The earth was kept at the center and we were trying to map the path of the sun. Now, let's do it in the heliocentric way. Looking from the heliocentric perspective, from winter solstice to summer solstice, there will be an increase in exposure of sun on the northern hemisphere from winter solstice to summer solstice. If you see over here, clearly the northern hemisphere will have an increased exposure to sun. So, when we move from summer to winter solstice, it will be Dakshinayana. All this while the dynamics are caused by the tilt of the earth with respect to the orbital plane. So, to summarize, Uttarayana is the apparent northward movement of the sun. What will happen? This movement begins to occur a day after the winter solstice during December, which is roughly around 21st of December, and continues for the 6 month period duration till the summer solstice, which dates to June 21st. This is observed calendarically from Makara Sankranti to Karkataka Sankranti. Whereas in Dakshinayanam, the apparent southward movement of the sun happens, which again spans for the remaining 6 months from summer to winter solstice, that is June 21 to December 21. This is observed calendarically from Karka Sankranti to Makara Sankranti. Now, let's talk about one more phenomenal aspect that is happening, and our ancient astronomers have seen this. This concept is called as the precession of equinox. This happens because the axis of the rotation of the earth itself can conically revolve. If you have played a top, have you played a top when you were younger? Or any other spinning tools for that matter, you will see that the axis of the top itself will undergo a certain revolution. The top might revolve, but the axis of the top itself will go a conical revolution. You see the animation here, the axis itself is going through a conical revolution because this one is fixated here. The top axis part is revolving. That's why it looks like a conical revolution. So like this top, the axis of the earth also slowly changes. It is usually ascribed to the gravitational force of the sun and the moon on the equatorial bulge of the rotating earth. So the rotational axis of the earth moves with respect to a space fixed reference frame as shown in this figure, like the axis of the precessing top. Now we will understand the precession of the equinox, otherwise called as Ayanachalana. So we saw that the axis of the spin will rotate clockwise as depicted here. To finish this full rotation, the precession period is very long and it is estimated to be 25,800 years. That means it takes about 72 years for the tilt to precess by 1 degree. So the tilt will precess by 1 degree in 72 years. So it will complete one full revolution, that conical revolution we just saw, in 25,800 years. One must learn that the technical term here is precession. In Indian astronomy, it is called as Ayanachalana. Again, precession is defined as the slow change in direction of the Earth's rotational axis. See this axis that we saw of the Earth, it will slowly change. That process, that phenomenon is called as precession. This will result in the equinox and solstice phenomena to slowly start happening earlier than it was happening before, and it will still keep precessing. So when, for example, we just said that in 72 years there will be a 1 degree precess. So similarly, based on this, the equinox and the solstice will go a little early and like that. Other ancient astronomical traditions used to take the period of equinox to equinox as a year or solstice to solstice as 1 year. Whereas in the Indian tradition, we take the starting point of Rashi as the fixed frame of reference and measure all celestial bodies' angles with respect to that. This is called as Nirayana longitude. We will know more about it a little later. Many hundred years ago, Makara Sankranti and winter solstice happened to be on the same day. And then as the equinox started precessing, it started moving from Jan 14. What started moving? The winter solstice started moving from Jan 14 to 1 day earlier. Now it is currently occurring on December 21st. Moving on to the next slide. So the Ayanachalana or the precession of the equinoxes have been happening for so many years, and it has been observed today that the axis of the earth almost nearly points to a star called as the pole star or the Polaris. The pole star is more of a position, but it currently points to the Polaris. But in the earlier Indian traditions, it has been captured that even the stars like Vega, Thuban have all been pole stars at some point in time, which tells us that we have had a very long tradition of recording and computing such aspects. Today, with the many tools, we try to unravel these complex and fascinating concepts. Imagine the great astronomers of our tradition deciphering all intricate astronomical phenomena through careful and long-term observations. Isn't it quite inspiring? There was also an active tradition of congregating and revising various parameters and methods of calculation periodically. This has been like a huge body of science for a very, very long time. The rigorous process is very, very scientific in nature. We will go on to appreciate the Indian calendrical system and the concepts that underlie them in the upcoming lecture. Thank you.